I am Sophie, 33 years old, and 12 years ago, my parents disowned me completely. I built my life from nothing after they cut me off, and I finally found peace. Last month, they suddenly reached out wanting to reconnect. I was cautious, but curious, until I discovered their true motives. What they're trying to do now is actually worse than abandoning me. Before I share this shocking story, let me know where you're watching from, hit that like button, and subscribe to hear how I uncovered what my parents are really after. Growing up in Oak Ridge, a picturesque small town in Wisconsin, my childhood looked perfect from the outside. Our two-story colonial home with its manicured lawn was the envy of our neighborhood. But inside those walls, perfection was not just expected, it was demanded. My father, James, was a successful financial advisor who managed investments for many wealthy families in our region. He wore tailored suits, drove luxury cars, and expected his family to reflect the same polished image. Every dollar in our household was meticulously tracked in his infamous budget spreadsheets. Money was never discussed openly, just controlled silently. Financial stability is everything, Sophie, he would lecture whenever I asked for anything outside his predetermined allocations. People without financial discipline end up as failures. My mother, Diana, was a former beauty queen who had given up her modeling aspirations when she married my father. She channeled her perfectionism into maintaining our family's social status. Our clothes were always immaculate, our manners impeccable, and our achievements prominently displayed. Mother ran our local country club's charity committee and used these social connections to ensure our family remained at the top of the town's social hierarchy. Appearances matter more than most people realize, she would remind me while inspecting my outfit before school. First impressions are lasting impressions. From an early age, I understood the unspoken rule: the Thomas family does not show weakness. Emotions were seen as indulgences, and personal desires were secondary to family reputation. My father worked long hours, and when he was home, conversations revolved around achievements, investments, and social obligations. My mother filled our calendar with the right lessons, the right activities and gatherings, with the right families. I tried desperately to please them. My room was kept spotless. My grades were excellent. I joined the debate team because Father said it would look good on college applications. I attended Mother's social events and learnt to make polite conversation with adults. But no matter how perfectly I performed, there was always something that needed improvement. What my parents never understood was that behind my obedient exterior, I was developing a passion they couldn't control. Art became my secret sanctuary. I would sketch late at night under my blankets with a flashlight. During free periods at school, I would slip into the art room where Ms. Jenkins, my art teacher, allowed me to experiment with paints and clay. "You have a natural eye for design, Sophie," Ms. Jenkins told me during my freshman year. "The way you blend colours and textures shows real talent." Those words sustained me through years of my parents' dismissal of anything creative as impractical hobbies. My younger brother Thomas had an easier time in our family. 4 years my junior, he was naturally inclined toward math and finance, taking after our father. While I struggled against the current, Thomas seemed to float effortlessly in the direction our parents approved. "Why can't you be more like your brother?" became a familiar refrain by the time I reached high school. Thomas excelled at golf, my father's favourite sport. He enjoyed accompanying Dad to investment seminars. He never questioned the path laid out for him. I remember my 16th birthday with painful clarity. After weeks of hints, I hoped my parents would give me the art supplies set I had been eyeing at the local art store. Instead, they presented me with a leather portfolio and a book on investment strategies for young adults. "This is to prepare you for business school," Father said, his tone indicating this was a settled matter. When I couldn't hide my disappointment, Mother took me aside. "Art is a lovely hobby, Sophie, but it's not a practical career path. We only want what's best for your future." That night, I cried myself to sleep. The next day, I discovered they had gone through my room and thrown away my collection of sketches and the few art supplies I had purchased with my babysitting money. They called it removing distractions. By senior year of high school, the weight of their expectations felt suffocating. During college application season, the tension reached a breaking point. "We've already spoken with Dean Anderson at Westfield Business School," Father announced over dinner one evening. "Your application will receive special consideration given our family's donations to their endowment." "But I want to apply to Grant Institute for Art and Design," I said, gathering all my courage. The silence that followed was deafening. My mother's fork clattered against her plate. My father's face hardened into a mask I knew too well. "That is not an option," he stated flatly. No daughter of mine will waste her potential on frivolous pursuits. We reached a bitter compromise. I would attend Westfield University, but double major in business and design. They reluctantly agreed, though they made it clear the design courses were a concession they expected me to outgrow. It was during my freshman orientation that I met Marcus. Tall, with thoughtful brown eyes and a camera always hanging around his neck, he was studying photography and business marketing. We connected instantly over our shared love of visual arts and the pressure we felt from our families. Marcus understood me in ways no one ever had. He saw my designs and encouraged me to pursue them seriously. With him, I felt seen for the first time. When I brought Marcus home during Thanksgiving break, my parents were coldly polite. After he left, their true feelings emerged. He seems unfocused, Father declared. That photography nonsense won't lead to a stable career. And his family owns a restaurant, Mother added with thinly veiled disdain. I was hoping you would meet someone from a more established background at Westfield. Their disapproval only strengthened my resolve to live authentically. Little did I know this was just the beginning of a rift that would soon become an unbridgeable chasm. By the start of my sophomore year at Westfield, I had reached a breaking point. My business classes left me feeling empty, while my design courses energized and inspired me. The contrast was impossible to ignore. After weeks of internal struggle, I made an appointment with my academic advisor to change my major to full-time art and design. Are you sure about this decision, Sophie? Dr. Barrett asked, concern evident in her eyes. I understand you're on a family scholarship. I'm sure, I replied, my voice steadier than I expected. I need to follow my own path. That evening, I called my parents to tell them my decision. I had rehearsed what to say, hoping they might understand. If I explained how passionate I felt about design and how my professors praised my talent, I was wrong. Absolutely not. My father's voice boomed through the phone. This is not what we agreed to. Dad, please listen. I'm really good at this. Professor Winters says I have professional level skills already. I don't care what some art teacher says. We are not paying for you to doodle for 4 years. My mother took the phone. Sophie, be reasonable. Think about your future. What kind of job security will you have? The conversation escalated until my father delivered his ultimatum. Either you continue with the business program as we agreed, or you're on your own. We will not support this foolishness. I took a deep breath. Then I guess I'm on my own. There was silence, then my father's cold response. You have 24 hours to reconsider. After that, we're stopping all payments to the university. True to his word, the next day my tuition account was frozen. My meal plan card stopped working. The parental support that I had taken for granted vanished overnight. When I called home, my mother answered, but quickly passed the phone to my father. You've made your choice, he said without preamble. As of this moment, you are no longer our daughter. Do not contact us again unless you're ready to apologize and return to the proper path. The phone call ended. Just like that, I was disowned. No longer a Thomas. Just Sophie alone, cut off and suddenly facing the terrifying reality of supporting myself through college. The following weeks were a blur of panic and desperate adjustments. I moved out of my comfortable dorm into a tiny apartment with 3 roommates I found through a campus housing board. I took a job as a barista with early morning shifts, before classes added evening shifts at a local restaurant, and spent weekends doing graphic design work for small businesses around campus. Sleep became a luxury. My carefully organized life devolved into a chaotic struggle for survival. There were nights I sat on my thin mattress on the floor of my shared room, wondering if I had made a terrible mistake. The weight of my parents' rejection crushed me. Had I thrown away my family for a dream that might never materialize, depression and anxiety became my constant companions. My grades suffered as I struggled to balance work and studies. I began questioning my worth, my decisions, everything about myself. Without my family's validation, who was I? Marcus became my rock during this time. He would bring me food when I was too exhausted to cook, help me study when deadlines loomed, and hold me when the pain of rejection became too much to bear alone. Your parents are wrong, Sophie, but he would tell me. Your talent is extraordinary. One day they'll see what they've thrown away. My friend Jasmine, whom I met in design class, offered similar support. She came from a working class background and taught me practical skills for surviving on a tight budget. When I couldn't afford textbooks, she shared hers. When my computer crashed before a major project, she let me use hers through the night. Families are supposed to lift you up, not tear you down. Jasmine said once after I received a particularly cruel email from my mother suggesting I was breaking her heart with my selfishness. Despite everything, I refused to abandon my education. I applied for every scholarship available, took out student loans, and worked until I was nearly collapsing from exhaustion. Each completed assignment, each project praised by my professors, became an act of defiance proof that I could succeed without my parents' support. Graduation day arrived after 3 years of this grueling schedule. I stood among my peers in my cap and gown, scanning the audience, knowing there would be no proud parents taking photos, no family celebration afterward. Marcus and Jasmine's families had kindly included me in their plans, but the absence of my own family created a hollow space nothing could fill. As I crossed the stage to receive my diploma, I heard Marcus and his parents cheering. In that moment, I felt both profound sadness and fierce pride. I had done this on my own terms. Later that evening, my phone rang with an unknown number. It was Thomas, my brother, calling secretly from a friend's phone. "I'm so proud of you, Sophie," he whispered. "I watched your graduation live stream on the university website. Mom and Dad don't know I'm calling." His voice, so familiar, yet now connected to a world that had rejected me, brought fresh tears. "Are you okay?" I asked suddenly, worried about him. "I'm fine. Just stuck in the middle. They forbid anyone from mentioning your name, but I miss you." "I miss you too, Thomas. I have to go before they notice I'm gone. Just wanted you to know someone from your family was watching today." "You did it, sis." Over the next few years, I made several attempts to reconnect with my parents. I sent birthday and Christmas cards that received no response. I tried calling on their anniversary only to have them hang up. I even drove to Oak Ridge once, sitting in my car outside our family home for hours, trying to summon the courage to knock on the door. I left without doing so, seeing my father's silhouette in the window and losing my nerve. My final attempt came 5 years after being disowned. I wrote a heartfelt letter expressing my love for them despite our differences, updating them on my career progress, and opening the door for reconciliation. 2 weeks later, the letter was returned to me, unopened with "Return to sender," written in my father's unmistakable handwriting. That was the moment I truly accepted that my parents had chosen their principles over their daughter. I packed away the family photos I had kept, deleted their contact information, and made a conscious decision to build a life without looking back. If they didn't want me, I would no longer want their approval. After graduation, I secured a position as a junior designer at Meridian Creative, a small but well-respected firm in Chicago. The salary was modest, but it was my first step into the professional world I had fought so hard to join. Marcus and I decided to move to Chicago together, sharing a one-bedroom apartment in a rapidly gentrifying neighborhood that we could barely afford. Our furniture consisted of second-hand finds and creative repurposing projects. "It's not much, but it is ours," Marcus said, as we sat on our salvaged sofa the first night in our new place. He took my hand and slipped a simple silver ring onto my finger. "And I was hoping we could make it official. Will you marry me, Sophie?" Through tears of joy, I said yes. This was my new beginning, my chosen path, my real family starting to take shape. My early career was challenging. I worked long hours trying to prove myself, taking on additional freelance projects to build my portfolio and supplement our income. My supervisor, Elaine, recognized my determination and became a mentor who pushed me to refine my skills. "You have raw talent," she told me during my first performance review. "But more importantly, you have grit. That combination will take you far." Those words meant everything to me. Unlike my parents' conditional approval, Elaine's mentorship focused on helping me grow professionally while respecting my creative vision. She became the first of many connections who would form my professional support network. Meanwhile, Marcus was building his own career in commercial photography. We supported each other through late nights, celebrated each other's wins, and provided comfort during inevitable setbacks. Without the safety net of family money, every decision carried weight. We learnt financial discipline out of necessity, not because someone demanded it. After 2 years at Meridian, I was promoted to mid-level designer. My client list grew, and my work began winning regional recognition. I specialized in brand identity development, helping companies tell their stories visually. Perhaps my own experience of reinvention made me particularly skilled at helping others define themselves. Our social circle expanded to include other young creatives. Jasmine had also moved to Chicago and introduced us to her network. Weekend gatherings in our slightly larger apartment became a tradition. These friends-chosen family filled our lives with laughter, honest conversations, and unconditional support. When Marcus and I married 3 years after moving to Chicago, our wedding was small but meaningful. Held in a renovated industrial space, decorated with installations we had created together, we were surrounded by people who truly celebrated our union. Marcus's parents welcomed me warmly, his mother often reminding me that I was now officially a Garcia. "Family isn't just blood," she told me during our wedding reception. "It's who loves you without conditions." The absence of my own parents was still painful, but the day was filled with so much genuine joy that the empty spaces felt less significant. As my professional reputation grew, I began dreaming of starting my own design consultancy. The idea terrified me. Without family connections or financial backing, failure could be catastrophic. Yet the desire to create something that was entirely mine, that reflected my values and vision, became impossible to ignore. With Marcus's encouragement, I took the leap. Artisan Design Studio began as a one-woman operation run from our spare bedroom. I leveraged my existing client relationships and Elaine's generous referrals to build a client base. The first year was nerve-wracking, with months of feast or famine. I worked around the clock, handling everything from creative direction to invoicing. Gradually, Artisan Design gained traction. I hired my first employee, then my second. We moved into a small studio space in an arts district. Each milestone felt like a direct refutation of my parents' belief that my chosen path would lead to failure. 5 years after being disowned, Marcus and I purchased our first home, a modest but charming 3-bedroom house with a dedicated studio space where I could work from home when needed. The day we received the keys, I stood in the empty living room and wept. This tangible symbol of stability, created entirely on our own terms, represented everything I had fought for. Throughout these years of external success, I continued to struggle internally with the wounds of abandonment. Trust didn't come easily to me. I lived with a constant fear that all I had built could vanish in an instant, just as my family had. Perfectionism, my parents' lasting gift, drove me to exhaustion as I tried to prove my worth through achievement. Marcus gently encouraged me to seek therapy. "Building a business is hard enough without carrying all this pain alone," he said one night after finding me awake at 3 a.m., obsessively redoing a project that was already excellent. Dr. Wilson, my therapist, helped me recognize how deeply my parents' rejection had affected my self-worth and decision-making. Our weekly sessions became sacred space for processing grief and learning healthier patterns. "What happened wasn't about your inadequacy," she explained during one breakthrough session. "It was about their inability to see your value outside their narrow vision." Slowly, I began separating my worth from my achievements, learning to value myself beyond productivity. I practiced setting boundaries with demanding clients, taking actual weekends off, and speaking kindly to myself when I made mistakes. We also worked on creating new traditions to replace the family rituals I had lost. Thanksgiving, once centered around my mother's formal dining room, became a friend's potluck, where everyone brought dishes representing their diverse backgrounds. Christmas evolved into a volunteer day, followed by a cozy gathering with our chosen family. These new traditions felt authentic rather than performative. As Artisan Design flourished, I began a mentorship program for young designers from disadvantaged backgrounds. Remembering how Miss Jenkins had nurtured my talent when my parents dismissed it, I wanted to pay that forward. This work became deeply fulfilling, allowing me to transform my painful experience into something constructive. By my 30th birthday, I had created a life that felt genuine and meaningful. My design studio had grown to a team of 8 with national clients. Marcus and I were discussing starting a family of our own. I had formed deep friendships and professional relationships based on mutual respect rather than obligation or status. During my birthday celebration, a gallery showing of personal projects I had created alongside my commercial work, I looked around at the community surrounding me and felt something I had been chasing for years: peace. Not the absence of pain, but the presence of wholeness despite it. I had stopped sending cards to my parents years ago. I no longer checked social media for glimpses of their lives, or drove past our family home when business took me near Oak Ridge. I had accepted that some wounds don't heal through reconciliation, but through creating something new in the broken places. Or so I thought, until an ordinary Tuesday last month, when an email appeared in my inbox that would shatter this hard-won peace. It was just after lunch on a Tuesday, when I was reviewing design mock-ups for a major client presentation. The notification sound from my email barely registered until I glanced at the sender's name, Diana Thomas, my mother, after 12 years of silence. My hands began to shake so badly I had to put down my stylus. The subject line read simply, "Reaching out." For several minutes, I just stared at her name in my inbox, unable to open the message, unable to delete it. When I finally clicked, the email was brief and jarringly casual. "Dear Sophie, your father and I have been doing a lot of thinking lately about family and what truly matters in life. We would like to reconnect with you if you're open to it. We've missed you. Love, Mom." No acknowledgement of 12 years of silence, no mention of disowning me, no apology for returning my letters unopened. Just "we've missed you," as though I had been away on a long vacation rather than forcibly expelled from the family. I felt physically ill. My chest tightened until I couldn't breathe properly. I closed my laptop and cancelled my afternoon meetings, driving home in a state of numbness. Marcus found me sitting on our back porch staring blankly at our garden. "They reached out," was all I could say, showing him the email on my phone. Marcus read it, his expression darkening. "That's it, after everything they did. What do you think they want?" I asked, my voice small. "Nothing good," he said, then softened, taking my hand. "But that's my protective instinct talking. Maybe they've genuinely changed. People sometimes do." That night, I barely slept. Old dreams resurfaced, standing outside my childhood home, knocking on doors that never opened. I woke repeatedly, my heart racing, torn between hope and terror. The next morning, I called Dr. Wilson and scheduled an emergency session. "This is a significant trigger for your abandonment trauma," she said as I sat in her office later that day. "Before you respond, if you choose to respond at all, let's establish what healthy boundaries would look like in this situation." We discussed what I needed to feel safe acknowledgement of the harm done, clear communication about their intentions, and gradual rebuilding of trust rather than immediate expectations of closeness. "Remember, Sophie, you are not the same person they knew. You have built a strong life. You get to decide the terms of any reconnection." After 3 days of careful consideration, I responded with a brief, guarded email. "Thank you for reaching out. It's been a long time with no contact despite my attempts over the years. I'm curious about why you want to reconnect now. Before moving forward, I would appreciate some acknowledgement of what happened between us." My mother replied the same day, her message equally vague. "We know there have been misunderstandings in the past. Your father has had a change of heart recently. We believe families should reconcile whenever possible. Could we perhaps have a phone call to discuss further misunderstandings?" The word felt like a slap. Disowning your daughter and returning her letters unopened for 12 years wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a deliberate, sustained rejection. Still, after consulting with Marcus and Dr. Wilson, I agreed to a phone call scheduled for 2 weeks later. Those 2 weeks were filled with anxiety. I prepared what I wanted to say, questions I needed, answered boundaries I would maintain. When the call finally came, hearing my mother's voice after so many years sent a shock through my system. "Sophie, darling, it's so wonderful to hear your voice," she gushed with the same social charm she had always used at her committee meetings. "Hello, Mother," I replied, struggling to keep my voice steady. The conversation that followed was an exercise in avoidance. My mother spoke about their life in Oak Ridge, mutual acquaintances. I barely remembered Thomas's career in finance. When I tried to address our estrangement directly, she deflected. "Oh, water under the bridge now, surely. Families have disagreements, but blood is thicker than water." When I pressed further, she sighed. "Your father is here. James, come say hello to Sophie." My father's voice was older, but still carried that authoritative tone that had dominated my childhood. "Sophie, you sound well." "I am well, no thanks to having to rebuild my life from scratch after being disowned," I replied more sharply than I intended. An uncomfortable silence followed before he cleared his throat. "Yes, well, we may have been hasty in our judgment." That was the closest thing to an apology I would receive during the entire conversation. The call concluded with their expressed desire to meet in person. My mother suggested they visit our home in Chicago, but something in her eagerness made me uncomfortable. I countered with a suggestion to meet at a neutral location, Le Beau, an upscale restaurant downtown. After ending the call, I sat in stunned silence. Marcus, who had been listening nearby, joined me on the sofa. "They didn't actually apologize, did they?" he observed. "Not once," I confirmed. "And they kept asking about where we live, my business, whether we own our home. It felt off." Over the next week, I prepared for our meeting with the same meticulous care I would give a high-stakes client presentation. Dr. Wilson helped me craft responses to potential scenarios and identify emotional triggers. I established clear boundaries for myself. I would listen, but not agree to anything in the moment. I would leave if the conversation became manipulative. Jasmine offered to be at the restaurant separately during our meeting, giving me a safe person to signal if things went sideways. "I don't trust them," she said bluntly. "The timing is too convenient. You've become successful, and suddenly they want back in your life." The night before the meeting, I hardly slept. The girl who had desperately wanted her parents' approval still lived somewhere inside me, alongside the woman who had learned to live without it. These two parts of myself waged war through the darkness until dawn. I arrived at Le Beau 30 minutes early, choosing a corner table with a clear view of the entrance. The restaurant's elegant interior, with its crisp white tablecloths and soft lighting, usually put me at ease, but today my stomach was in knots. I texted Jasmine, who confirmed she was seated at the bar, then Marcus, who sent back a heart emoji, and "I'm proud of you no matter what happens." At exactly noon, they walked in. 12 years had changed them more than I expected. My father's confident stride now seemed slightly stiff, his hair completely silver. My mother was still immaculately dressed, but her carefully maintained appearance couldn't hide the new lines around her eyes. They scanned the restaurant until my mother spotted me and nudged my father. I stood as they approached, unsure of the appropriate greeting after 12 years of estrangement. My mother solved this by stepping forward to embrace me. I remained rigid in her arms, the familiar scent of her perfume triggering a cascade of memories. "Sophie, darling, you look wonderful," she said, stepping back to assess me. "Doesn't she look wonderful, James?" My father nodded, offering his hand for a formal handshake. "You've done well for yourself, I hear." We sat down, the awkwardness palpable as we ordered drinks and appetizers. My mother filled the silence with superficial observations about the restaurant's decor and the Chicago weather. I noticed how she avoided looking directly at me, for too long, her gaze constantly shifting around the room. So, I finally said after our drinks arrived, "You wanted to reconnect. Why now after 12 years? My mother sipped her sparkling water. "Well, as I mentioned, your father has been reconsidering some of his past decisions. I'm here, Mother. You can address me directly." She looked momentarily flustered before regaining her composure. "Of course, dear. What I mean is, we've been reflecting on life and what's important. Family should be together." Family. I repeated the word hollow on my tongue. The same family that told me I was no longer their daughter, the same family that returned my letters unopened. My father cleared his throat. "Perhaps we were too harsh back then. You were young and headstrong. We thought a firm approach would bring you to your senses." "A firm approach," I echoed in disbelief. "You cut me off completely. I nearly had to drop out of college. I worked 3 jobs while taking full-time classes. I went hungry some weeks to pay rent. And look how well you turned out," my mother interjected brightly. "So resourceful and independent. We've heard about your design studio. Artisan design, is it? Thomas mentioned you've been quite successful." The conversation had already veered away from any real accountability, just as I had feared. I pressed on. "Have you been monitoring my career?" My parents exchanged glances before my father spoke. "We've kept informed. Just because we had our differences doesn't mean we weren't interested in your progress." Differences. The word ignited something in me. "You disowned me for choosing a career path you didn't approve of." "Those aren't differences." That was a complete rejection. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. Our appetizers arrived, providing a momentary distraction. I noticed my father checking his watch. "Your business seems to be doing quite well," he finally said, changing the subject entirely. "Thomas mentioned you have some impressive clients." "Thomas seems to have mentioned a lot," I noted. "Has he been reporting back to you about my life all these years?" My mother's smile tightened. "He's worried about you, Sophie. We all are. You're still family despite everything." The conversation continued in this vein through the first course, superficial pleasantries interspersed with probing questions about my business, our home, our finances. Not once did either of them offer a genuine apology or acknowledge the damage they had caused. As the main course arrived, my father's questions became more specific. "So tell me about your client portfolio. Any major corporations, financial institutions, perhaps? Why the interest in my specific clients?" I asked, suspicion growing. Just curious about your level of success, he replied smoothly. I always knew you had potential, even if we disagreed about how to apply it. My mother leaned forward. Sophie, dear, we've been thinking about family investment opportunities. Your father has some ideas about how we might support your business. Perhaps take it to the next level. My business is doing fine without family investment, I said coldly. I've managed for 12 years without your support. But imagine what you could accomplish with proper backing, my father countered. Your design skills combined with my financial expertise. We could create quite a legacy. Something in his tone made me pause. The pieces were starting to align in a troubling pattern. What's really going on here? I asked directly. You haven't spoken to me in 12 years, and suddenly you're interested in investing in my business. My parents exchanged another glance of silent communication I remembered from childhood. My father sighed and leaned forward, lowering his voice. I've had some challenges with my investment firm recently. Nothing serious, just some regulatory misunderstandings that have temporarily limited my options. What kind of regulatory misunderstandings? He waved his hand dismissively. Technical matters. The point is, I'm looking to diversify through family businesses. Keep things in-house, so to speak. You mean you're in trouble, I translated, and you want to use my legitimate business for something. Sophie, my mother interjected. Your father is simply trying to create opportunities that benefit the entire family. After all we've done for you. After all you've done for me, I repeated incredulously. You abandoned me when I was 20 years old. You left me to fend for myself, you returned my letters, and now you want to use my business. My father's facade finally cracked. Listen to me carefully, Sophie. I'm facing an investigation for some investment irregularities. Nothing I did was wrong, but the regulatory climate has become absurdly strict. I need to move certain assets, and your business provides a perfect channel. The truth landed like a physical blow. You want to use my company to launder money. Don't be dramatic, he hissed. I'm talking about family helping family, protecting our legacy. You have no legacy with me, I replied, my voice shaking with anger. You threw that away 12 years ago. My father's expression hardened into something ugly and familiar. You should remember where you came from, Sophie. The Thomas name still means something in certain circles. It would be unfortunate if rumors about your business connections became problematic. Are you threatening me? My mother reached across the table. Sophie, please, we're just asking for a little family loyalty. Is that too much after everything? Something inside me finally snapped. Years of pain, rejection, and hard-won healing crystallized into absolute clarity. Family loyalty. I stood up slowly, placing my napkin on the table. Let me tell you what family loyalty is. Family loyalty is supporting your child's dreams, not just the dreams you choose for them. Family loyalty is being there during hard times, not creating them. Family loyalty is unconditional love, not rejection until you need something. My father started to speak, but I cut him off. I don't know what trouble you're in, and frankly, I don't care. I built my business ethically, client by client, project by project. I will not compromise that for people who couldn't even be bothered to attend my college graduation. I grabbed my purse and left them sitting there. As I passed Jasmine at the bar, she stood to follow me out. Only when we reached the street did I allow the tears to come. They only reached out because they needed something from me, I said through sobs. 12 years of silence, and it wasn't even about reconciliation. It was about using me. The final illusion had been shattered. My parents hadn't changed. They hadn't missed me. They had simply found a use for me. I sat in my car in the restaurant parking lot, hands shaking too badly to insert the key into the ignition. Tears streamed down my face as 12 years of suppressed hope finally collapsed. I had spent so long telling myself I had moved on, that their approval no longer mattered, but some small part of me had still yearned for genuine reconciliation. Now even that faint hope was extinguished. They hadn't reached out because they missed me or regretted their actions. They had reached out because they needed something from me, specifically my legitimate business as a front for their financial manipulations. I called Marcus, barely able to form coherent sentences through my tears. They want to use my business for something illegal. They didn't care about me at all. I'm coming to get you, he said immediately. Where are you, Le Beau parking lot. Jasmine is with me. Stay there. I'll be there in 15 minutes. Jasmine sat with me in silence, her hand on my shoulder as I tried to process what had happened. When Marcus arrived, he opened my car door and simply held me. "Let's get you home," he said gently. Back at our house, I recounted the entire conversation in detail, including my father's veiled threats and my mother's manipulative appeal to family loyalty. Their faces grew increasingly grim as I spoke. "They're desperate," Marcus observed. "Whatever financial trouble your father is in, it must be serious for him to risk reconnecting after all this time. I just can't believe they thought I would actually help them," I said, still stunned by their audacity. Did they think 12 years of rejection would make me eager to commit financial fraud for them? We spent the evening discussing what to do next. Should I contact a lawyer, report my father's vague admissions to authorities, simply ignore the situation and hope they would disappear from my life again? The next morning brought an unexpected development. As I was preparing for an early client meeting, our doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw a face I hadn't seen in person for over a decade, my brother Thomas. He looked older, more like our father than I remembered, but with a hesitancy in his posture that our father would never display. I opened the door cautiously. "Sophie," he said, looking simultaneously relieved and anxious. "Can I come in? I need to talk to you." I led him to the living room, noticing how his eyes scanned our home, taking in the artwork, the photographs evidence of the life I had built without them. "Mum and Dad sent me," he admitted after declining my offer of coffee. "They said your meeting didn't go well." "That's putting it mildly," I replied. "Did they tell you why they wanted to reconnect after 12 years? Thomas looked down at his hands. "Not exactly. Dad said something about helping you expand your business." I laughed without humour. "Is that what he called it? Thomas, they want to use my company to hide money?" Dad admitted he's under investigation. My brother's face fell, confirming he knew more than he had initially let on. "It's bad, Sophie, really bad. Dad's investment firm has been under investigation for months. They lost the house. They're staying with me right now." "What? They lost the house?" The revelation stunned me. Our family home had been my father's pride, the physical manifestation of his success. The feds froze most of their assets pending investigation. Dad's facing possible indictment for fraud, though he insists it's all a misunderstanding. Thomas looked exhausted. "He's been desperately trying to move money around before everything gets frozen. When he heard about your design firm's success, he got this idea. To use me as his last resort," I finished bitterly. "After disowning me for 12 years. Thomas ran his hands through his hair, a gesture so familiar it made my chest ache. "I'm caught in the middle here, Sophie. They're still our parents." "Are they?" I challenged. "Parents don't abandon their children for following their dreams. Parents don't go 12 years without contact. Parents don't try to drag their children into criminal activity. They're flawed," he conceded. "Dad especially has always been controlling and status-obsessed. But they're still family." "A family isn't just blood, Thomas. It's how people treat you. It's respect and support and unconditional love. What they did, what they're trying to do now, that's not family. That's exploitation." We talked for over an hour. I told him about my struggle after being disowned, how I had built my life and career despite their rejection. He shared his own complicated relationship with our parents, how he had followed the path of least resistance, but increasingly questioned their values and decisions. "I envy your courage," he admitted. "You chose your own path despite everything. I took the easy way." "It's never too late to make different choices," I told him. As Thomas prepared to leave, he hesitated at the door. "They're going to be angry that I didn't convince you. Dad especially is desperate. Be careful, Sophie." His warning proved prophetic. That evening, I received a disturbing email from my father. "Sophie, I'm disappointed by your lack of family loyalty yesterday. Perhaps you've forgotten that success in business often depends on reputation and connections. I would hate to see your hard work undermined by unfortunate rumors. Reconsider my offer. We can make this beneficial for everyone involved." The threat was thinly veiled but unmistakable. I forwarded the email to Rachel, an attorney friend who specialized in business law. "This is concerning," she said when we spoke by phone the next day. "It sounds like he's threatening to damage your business reputation if you don't cooperate. I suggest documenting all communication from now on. Don't delete anything." Over the next week, the situation escalated. 3 of my clients contacted me about strange calls they had received questioning my company's business practices. When I investigated, the calls had come from untraceable numbers, but the timing was too coincidental to ignore. Then I discovered something truly disturbing. While reviewing our company's social media engagement metrics, our digital marketing manager flagged several accounts that had been monitoring our posts intensively for months. Further investigation revealed they were fake accounts created around the time my mother's first email arrived. They've been watching me, I realized with growing horror, planning this approach for months. The final straw came when my mother appeared unannounced at my studio office. I was in a client meeting when my assistant interrupted to say an older woman claiming to be my mother was insisting on seeing me. I found her in our reception area, examining our client portfolio display with calculating eyes. "Mother, what are you doing here?" I asked coldly after asking my assistant to give us privacy. "I thought we could talk more calmly," she said, smiling, as though her presence was a pleasant surprise rather than an intrusion. "Your father can be rather direct sometimes." I wanted to explain things my way. "There's nothing to explain. I want no part of whatever scheme Dad is planning." Her smile faded. "Sophie, your father protected and provided for you for 18 years. Is it too much to ask for your help when he needs it?" "Yes, it is too much to ask me to commit financial fraud," I replied firmly. "Please leave now or I'll have to call security." She gathered her designer purse, her expression hardening. "You always were stubborn. Your father said you'd need convincing. He wanted me to mention that he has documentation that could implicate Marcus in some of his investment activities from years ago." My blood ran cold. "What are you talking about?" "Something about consulting work Marcus did for one of your father's companies while you were in college. The paperwork could look quite problematic if certain authorities saw it." She delivered this bomb casually as though discussing the weather. "Just something to consider." After she left, I called Marcus immediately. He remembered the freelance photography work he had done for one of my father's business associates during college, but insisted everything had been legitimate. I took product photos for their catalogue and website. There was nothing shady about it. But my father could make it look suspicious, I realized aloud. He has the resources and connections to create problems even from legitimate work. That evening, Marcus and I made a difficult decision. We would take legal action rather than waiting for my parents to escalate further. The next day, I met with a more specialized attorney who dealt with financial crimes and harassment. After reviewing all the evidence, the threatening email the client calls the fake social media accounts, and my mother's veiled threat against Marcus, she recommended sending a formal cease and desist letter and preparing documentation for a restraining order if necessary. "These are serious harassment tactics," she explained, "and the attempt to involve your business in what sounds like money laundering is a federal offense. You need to protect yourself." Just as we were finalizing our legal strategy, I received a cryptic text from Thomas. "Watch out. They're planning something. We'll call from secure line tomorrow." The walls were closing in. What had begun as an unexpected reconciliation attempt had devolved into a nightmare of threats and manipulation. The parents who should have protected me were now actively trying to harm me and the life I had built. That night, lying awake beside Marcus, I realized that this final betrayal had accomplished something 12 years of absence couldn't. It had freed me from any lingering hope of having the parents I deserved. The truth was both painful and liberating. They were not the people I had spent years hoping they might become. The following weeks were a blur of legal consultations, documentation, and growing anxiety. Thomas called as promised using a prepaid phone he had purchased specifically to contact me without our parents' knowledge. "Dad's getting desperate," he explained. "The investigation is accelerating. They've interviewed former clients and employees. It's only a matter of time before formal charges are filed." "What exactly did he do?" I asked. From what I've pieced together, he was running a Ponzi scheme with client investments, using new client money to pay returns to existing clients while skimming millions for himself. When the market turned, he couldn't keep up the payments. I thought of my father's lectures about financial discipline, his contempt for those who took shortcuts. The hypocrisy was staggering. And now he wants to use my business to hide his illegal gains, I concluded. That's part of it. But I think he also wants to establish a family business narrative. Make it look like your success is connected to his financial guidance. Create a story that money flowed legitimately between family enterprises. "That's never going to happen," I stated firmly. "I know." Thomas sighed. "I've tried to tell them to leave you alone, but Dad's convinced you'll eventually cooperate out of family loyalty or fear. He's mentioned Marcus several times. The implied threat against my husband strengthened my resolve." After consulting with our attorney, I moved forward with the cease and desist letter, sending copies to both my parents and their last known business addresses. Their response was swift and vicious. My father called my personal number, leaving a voicemail filled with vitriol, "You ungrateful, selfish girl. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us." With legal threats, "You'll regret this, Sophie. I promise you'll regret choosing strangers over your own blood." Toasting. My mother took a different approach, sending a tearful email claiming I was destroying the family and breaking her heart all over again. "We only wanted to be part of your life again," she wrote, conveniently omitting their financial motivations. When these tactics failed to move me, they escalated. Several of my largest clients received anonymous emails containing vague insinuations about my business practices. My studio received an unexpected inspection from a city official who later turned out to have connections to one of my father's associates. Most alarmingly, Marcus found evidence that someone had attempted to access our home security system. We immediately upgraded our security, installing cameras and changing all our passwords and access codes. Through it all, I maintained detailed records of every interaction, every threat, every suspicious occurrence. My attorney built a compelling case for harassment and attempted coercion. The breaking point came when my mother appeared at a charity event where I was presenting an award for emerging designers. She approached me during the reception afterward, creating a scene when I refused to speak with her. "My own daughter won't even acknowledge me," she cried loudly enough for nearby guests to hear. "After all I sacrificed for her career, security escorted her out, but the damage to my professional reputation was concerning." Industry colleagues who witnessed the incident asked uncomfortable questions about my family situation. The next day, with my attorney's guidance, I filed for a restraining order against both my parents. The court date was set for the following week. I felt simultaneously empowered and devastated. Taking legal action against my own parents was never something I could have imagined, yet here we were. When we appeared in court, my parents portrayed themselves as misunderstood, loving parents, trying to reconnect with an estranged daughter. My mother dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief, while my father spoke soberly about family misunderstandings. But evidence doesn't lie. The judge reviewed the documented pattern of harassment, the threatening communications, and the attempts to interfere with my business. When my attorney presented evidence linking my father to the fake social media accounts that had been monitoring my business for months before their initial contact, his credibility crumbled. The restraining order was granted. My parents were legally prohibited from contacting me, coming near my home or business, or using third parties to communicate with me. As we left the courthouse, I felt no triumph, only a profound sadness that it had come to this. What I didn't expect was to see Thomas waiting outside. He approached cautiously, aware of the tense situation. "I wanted you to know I'm moving out of my place. I can't keep supporting their behavior. What they've done to you, what they tried to do, it's unforgivable." The admission clearly cost him. Thomas had always been the good son, the one who followed the path of least resistance. Standing up to our parents represented a seismic shift in his life. "Where will you go?" I asked. "I've got a friend who's letting me stay in his guest room until I figure things out. I've also been talking to the federal investigators." He looked down, then met my eyes directly. "I'm cooperating with their case against Dad. It was the right thing to do, even though it feels terrible." In that moment, something shifted between us. We weren't just siblings connected by blood and shared childhood memories. We were two adults choosing integrity over toxic family loyalty. "Would you like to come over for dinner sometime?" I offered. "Meet Marcus properly." His smile was tentative but genuine. "I'd like that." The restraining order marked the end of my parents' direct harassment, but the emotional aftermath was just beginning. I struggled with conflicting feelings, relief at being legally protected, lingering sadness at the finality of the estrangement, anger at their selfish motives, and grief for the loving parents I had never truly had. In therapy, Dr. Wilson helped me process these complex emotions. "What you're experiencing is a second abandonment," she explained. "The first was when they disowned you. This time you've seen clearly that even their attempt to reconnect wasn't about love, but about using you." "How do I move past this?" I asked. "I thought I had healed, but this reopened everything." "Healing isn't linear," she reminded me. "Each new wound requires its own healing. But you're not starting from zero this time. You have resources now, internal strength, supportive relationships, professional success. And most importantly, you've taken action to protect yourself rather than seeking their approval." She was right. 12 years ago, I had been devastated by their rejection, questioning my worth and decisions. This time I had stood firm in my values, refusing to compromise my integrity, even for the parents I had once desperately wanted to please. The federal investigation into my father's business practices continued. Thomas kept me updated, though I maintained a deliberate distance from the legal proceedings. Eventually, my father accepted a plea deal admitting to securities fraud and tax evasion in exchange for a reduced sentence. Seeing his name in financial news headlines brought a strange sense of closure. The powerful, intimidating figure who had controlled my childhood was revealed to the world as a fraud. His carefully constructed image of success and propriety had crumbled under the weight of his own deception. My mother, though, not charged with any crimes, lost her social standing in Oak Ridge. The country club committees and charity boards that had defined her identity distanced themselves from the scandal. According to Thomas, she was bitter and resentful, blaming everyone but herself for their downfall. As for me, I realized that the final confrontation with my parents, painful as it was, had freed me from the last vestiges of seeking their approval. The fantasy that they might someday recognize my worth and love me unconditionally had been permanently shattered. In its place grew something stronger, complete ownership of my life and choices. 1 year has passed since the court granted the restraining order against my parents. In that time, I've experienced a profound shift in how I relate to my family history and my own identity. The final confrontation, though, painful, provided a kind of closure I hadn't realized I needed. For years, I had built my life with an underlying narrative that I was succeeding despite my parents' rejection. My accomplishments carried an edge of defiance, as though each achievement was partly aimed at proving them wrong. But that perspective still kept them at the center of my story. Now I've reclaimed my narrative entirely. My success isn't about them at all, it's about the path I chose, the work I love and the life I've built authentically. Their approval or disapproval has become irrelevant to who I am. My design business continued to thrive, despite their attempts to damage it. In fact, the experience inspired me to be more intentional about my company's values and culture. I've implemented policies that support work-life balance, creative expression, and ethical business practices, everything my father's company lacked. The healing process with my brother Thomas has been one of the unexpected gifts from this difficult chapter. After years of minimal contact and his position caught between loyalty to our parents and love for me, we're building a genuine adult relationship based on mutual respect and shared values. Thomas visits for dinner regularly now. He's found his own apartment and begun therapy to address the complex dynamics of our family. Recently, he confided that he's considering a career change from finance to teaching something he believes would be more fulfilling, but that our father would have dismissed as wasting potential. I've spent my whole life trying to be what Dad wanted. He told me during a recent conversation, watching you build a successful life on your own terms made me realize I have choices too. The fact that my journey could inspire him to question the path he was given rather than chose feels like transforming something painful into something constructive. It's a form of healing I never anticipated. Marcus has been my steadfast partner throughout this entire experience. The threats against him only strengthened our bond and commitment to protecting what we've built together. Recently, we've begun discussions about starting our own family conversations that inevitably bring up questions about what kind of parents we want to be. I'm afraid of repeating patterns. I admitted to him one evening, "What if I don't know how to be a good parent, since I didn't have that example?" "You know exactly what not to do," he pointed out. "And you've spent years building healthy relationships based on respect and genuine care. That's the foundation of good parenting." My work with Dr. Wilson has focused on breaking generational patterns, recognizing the subtle ways my parents' values and behaviors might have been internalized, despite my conscious rejection of them. I've learned to identify when perfectionism or fear of abandonment drives my decisions and to choose differently. Perhaps the most meaningful development has been my work helping others navigate family estrangement. What began as an anonymous blog about my experiences grew into a supportive community. Twice monthly, I now facilitate a support group for people who have had to create boundaries with toxic family members. "You showed me it's possible to thrive without family approval," one group member told me recently. "Before finding this group, I felt so alone in my decision to distance myself from my parents." Hearing stories similar to mine has been both validating and perspective shifting. Some stories make me realize how much worse my situation could have been. Others remind me that estrangement isn't always permanent. Some families do find healing pathways, though it requires accountability and genuine change from all parties. In my case, I've accepted that reconciliation with my parents is unlikely. My father is serving his sentence, and my mother has made no attempts to take responsibility for her actions. The restraining order expired 6 months ago, but they have not reached out again. I no longer wait for an apology that will never come. Instead, I've found my own resolution through accepting the reality of who they are, rather than clinging to who I wished they could be. That acceptance isn't about forgiveness in the traditional sense, it's about freedom from the emotional power they held over me for so long. Family, I've learned, is not determined solely by blood. Family consists of those who support your authentic self, who celebrate your joys and help shoulder your sorrows, who respect your boundaries and honor your truth. By that definition, I am surrounded by family chosen connections based on love and mutual respect. My journey from abandonment to empowerment wasn't linear or simple. It involved grief, rage, determination, setbacks, and ultimately a kind of peace I never thought possible. The pain of rejection didn't disappear, but it transformed into something useful. Compassion for others in similar situations. Clarity about my own values and courage to live authentically. If you're watching this and struggling with family estrangement or toxic family dynamics, know that you aren't alone. Your worth isn't determined by those who should have loved you unconditionally, but couldn't. You have the right to protect yourself from harm, even when that harm comes from family, and you can build a beautiful, meaningful life filled with genuine connections. Thank you for listening to my story. I'd love to hear about your experiences with family expectations or how you've defined family on your own terms. Leave a comment below sharing your thoughts. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and subscribe to hear more authentic stories about navigating life's challenges. And if you know someone who might benefit from hearing this perspective, please share it with them. Remember that your story matters and you deserve to write it on your own terms.